Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome back to Synth Stuff. It's the end of 2024. This is my list of the top 10 synthesizer releases of 2024 coming up. As I usually do in my top 10 lists or lists of synthesizers, I am restricting my list to synthesizers that have a physical keyboard to them. So it's a standalone synthesizer, has a keyboard of some kind on it, so that eliminates modular, semi-modular, modules, that sort of thing, because if I included all of those, and not that those aren't great synthesizers, but if I include all of those, this video will be 2 hours long. There's all kinds of releases from Behringer and Digitakt and so many other manufacturers that have brought out modular devices or semi-modular devices. Not going to concentrate on those at all. This video is strictly keyboard synthesizers. And there's been some really great releases in 2024. I did want to include originally on the list the Montage ESP, because that was the 2.0 ESP that duplicates all the functionality of the Montage M in your computer, in your DAW. You can have multiple instances of it. And it is revolutionary in terms of VSTs. In order to take the hardware like this, I mean, you could do that with Access Virus to a point, but this brings not only the entire functionality of the Montage, but the library, the sounds, the presets, and it's completely disconnected from the unit. Unlike the Access, where you actually had to have the virus connected, this you can actually run separately. So if you use your Montage at home in your studio, you can then go on the road with a MIDI controller and a laptop and have the exact same sounds and functionality that you have on your Montage M at home. However, it is a piece of software, does not have an attached keyboard, so I'm not including it in this list. But it definitely should have an honorable mention because it is such amazing technology. So I've ordered these in the top 10. Coming in at number 10 is the new Korg MicroKorg 2. This is an update of the original MicroKorg, which has been on sale for I don't know how long, 20 years? It's very similar to it, but with subtle upgrades. First thing you'll notice, it has this nice almost 3-inch, I think it's 2.8-inch color LCD screen that really lets you get into editing sounds and configuring the synthesizer much easier than you could with the old MicroKorg. It of course keeps the same preset categorization knob, so you can browse through presets by category. It does have a vocoder, but it actually has a lot more in terms of vocal processing. You can do pitch matching, you can play chords and sing into it, and it'll play the chords, it'll repitch your voice and add harmonies and as well as the regular vocoder, or you can just add reverb and effects to your vocal, and it does have that included microphone. Because it has that screen, it also allows you to edit sounds a lot easier. You can get into the synth engine and create your own sounds, your own presets, and do that a lot easier than you could on the old MicroKorg. Pretty nice synthesizer, except for mini keys. The old Korg had them too, but I'm really not a fan of mini keys. Mini keys pretty much guarantees that I'm not going to buy your synthesizer. I hate mini keys. $549 for the Korg MicroKorg 2. Number 9 on the list is also from Korg. It is the KingKorg NEO. The original KingKorg, when it came out, it was a virtual analog synth. I believe it was a 4-octave or 5-octave, if I recall correctly. And for the time, it was a pretty decent synthesizer. The KingKorg NEO is also a virtual analog synthesizer. However, it has that horrible 37 key keypad that they use on the Wavestate and the OP6 and other small 3-octave form factors from Korg. So they did saddle it with that nasty keyboard, unfortunately. Internally, however, it is a capable synthesizer. It has 24 voices, 18 different filters you can pick from, 138 different oscillator types that you can use, and there are 3 oscillators per voice. And in those oscillators, you can have wavetable, you can have traditional analog modeled, you could have PCM if you want to put samples in there, you can have noise, so there's quite a wide range of options that you can assign to the sound production portion of the oscillators. It does have a 16-band vocoder, so if you have more bands, the more bands you have, the more intelligible the vocoder is. That takes computing power, so having that nice 16-band vocoder means you're going to be able to use this with its included mic to create some legible vocoded sounds. Unfortunately, the knobs are a little bit flimsy, and it is saddled with the same awful tiny screens that they use on the OB-Xa and the Wavestate and the Mod Wave, unfortunately. Little tiny low resolution screen that's like a postage stamp. For all this good stuff with a tiny screen, $800 for the KingKorg NEO. Number 8 on the list, the Behringer UB-Xa. This is a clone of the Oberheim OB-Xa, which is a classic 80s analog synth that is unavailable and super expensive. Crazy expensive, thousands of dollars expensive. The filters and oscillators in this synthesizer are very distinctive, and once you heard it, you will know all kinds of songs in the 80s that use this synthesizer. Behringer created a circuit level clone of the original OB-Xa. So it is a fully analog synthesizer, and it has all the oscillators and chips identical to the original with a few exceptions. It's a 16 voice bitimbral synth, and it has a 5-octave key bed with polyphonic aftertouch, a first from Behringer. Unfortunately, the UB-Xa does not have any effects, which is just like the original, so you're going to get kind of a dry sound out of it. But if you have DAW or external effects or pedals or so on, then you can add those effects after the fact. The price of the Behringer UB-Xa is $1,200. A little bit high in terms of a Behringer synth, but it is a very well received and well reviewed synthesizer from Behringer. Number 7 is the Korg Wavestate SE. The original Wavestate had 64 voice polyphony. The Wavestate Mark II had a faster processor, so we could do 96. The Wavestate SE has a faster yet processor and could do 120 voice polyphony. The main difference is that it comes in a metal case with a 5-octave key bed with aftertouch, unlike the miserable non-aftertouch 37 key bed on the original Wavestate. The other difference is that it has velocity release. So if you put it registers velocity on the key down, but also registers velocity on the key up, so that you can actually connect that to different things in the mod matrix. It unfortunately still has that awful tiny little screen, and if you actually look at the Wavestate, the control layout is identical on the SE. It's just in the middle with empty real estate on either side of that metal case. It does come with its own road case, and it is a decent road case designed specifically for the Wavestate SE. When announced, they announced it at $2,700, and people were like, whoa, for a Wavestate, that's a bit much. So then when they actually brought it out, it was $2,000. And now you can buy it, and Korg sells them directly through Reverb. I'll put a link to that in the below. And in fact, I'll put links to all of these in the description below. If you want to buy one of these, you have to get it through Reverb from Korg directly for $1,300. And for $1,300, it's a hell of a synth. It's solid metal case, really high quality key bed, and the Wavestate itself is a tremendous synthesizer, amazingly capable. You can use it live. I know Mark Barnes, he uses one live. You can use it as an amazing synthesizer for scoring, for soundtracks. So a really great synthesizer. Number 6 on the list is the Oberheim TEO-5. This is a fully analog 5-voice polyphonic synthesizer with 2 oscillators per voice with ring mod, cross mod, and so on. Everything you would expect from an analog synthesizer with analog oscillators. It is polyphonic. It does have a polyphonic step sequencer included with an arpeggiator, and it does have a gorgeous 44-key FITAR key bed. So it is a FITAR, so it's nice to play, but again, limited to only 44 keys, so that small form factor does come into play. It sounds great as an analog keyboard, but the price is up there at $1,500. So while it does sound good, if you love that Oberheim sound, you want an original Oberheim, it's a steal. But if you were looking just for an analog synthesizer that can do what this can do, you can probably find something for less than that. Compare that to the Behringer, which is also fully analog, with a much larger polyphonic aftertouch key bed, and it's several $100s less. But if you want the true blue Oberheim without spending a fortune, this is for you. Number 5, this is the one that I think is really one of the best deals you can buy in synthesizers today. It is the Behringer Wave. It's announced, it's available in limited places, I know Sweetwater is still back ordered for them, but technically it is announced, it's out, it's shipping 2024, so we're going to include it in this list. This is Behringer's clone of the original PPG Wave from the 1980s. And the PPG Wave is an amazing synthesizer that was used by everyone on everything. Bands like Depeche Mode, they did entire albums based on the PPG Wave, and you will hear sounds in there that are immediately recognizable. It's a hybrid wavetable synth, so it has wavetables loaded in there, but then flow through analog filters and amplitude envelopes. It comes with 30 factory wavetables. You can load more in there if you want. It has 8-voice polyphony, and unique to, I don't think I've ever seen this on another Behringer synth, each of those individual voices has its own output on the back. So if you wanted to, you could actually record all the different voices separately if you had it set up as a split or whatnot. You could actually do that with this, which is a really unique feature. It has a 4-octave key bed with polyphonic aftertouch. Once again, Behringer for the win with a polyphonic aftertouch key bed. And the price is unbelievable, $600 for the Behringer Wave. Unbelievable price for this. Originally, this was going to be out at about double the price, but Behringer's employees voted to donate the proceeds from this synthesizer to a charity, so the price came down to only $600, which is just a steal for this. I highly suspect one of these is going to be showing up in my studio here. And even if you don't want a recreation of that 1980s Wave synthesizer, you can use it as a MIDI controller. It's got a 4-octave polyphonic aftertouch keybed on it. Used as a MIDI controller. You can't buy a polyphonic aftertouch keybed for $600 as a MIDI controller, but this one has a synthesizer that comes with it for free. So it's a no-brainer, really. This probably should be higher on the list, but we're going to leave this at number 5. Number 4, the Roland Fantom EX. It's both a software and a hardware synth. So if you have an original Fantom like I have down here, you can buy the EX upgrade for $200 and get all the features that Roland now sells in the branded Fantom EX. Yes, they sell a synthesizer that says Fantom EX on it, so it counts for this list. But if you have the original Fantom, you can upgrade it to the EX for $200. Among an updated operating system, it gives you a bunch of synthesizer engines in it included. Are Enzyme. Enzyme is their incredible virtual analog wavetable synthesizer. It can make all kinds of crazy sounds. Enzyme is really, I think Enzyme was originally sold for $200 itself. So the fact that you get that as part of this upgrade is great. If you already purchased any of the synthesizers now included in the Fantom EX upgrade, then they will actually refund you that original amount. You just have to contact their support. Also included are ACB versions of the Jupiter 8, the Juno 106, the JX8P, the SH101, and the JD800. Obviously the JD800 isn't an ACB because it's a digital synth, but you know what I mean. But ACB versions, which is the same technology used in the System 8. The original models that were in the Fantom of the Jupiter 8 and all those analog classics are just Zencore models that are made to sound the same, but they aren't actually producing the sounds the same way. So they're not really 100% accurate. Totally different. ACB means they are actually modeling the circuitry in those classic synthesizers, and as a result, they sound exactly like the originals. You can also tell it to age the synthesizer model, the ACB model, so maybe the capacitors are wearing out, and so the synthesizer is starting to sound kind of wonky, and you can do that in the ACB engine. The fact that you get a JD800 in there as well is just mind-blowing. I have a JD800 over here. I've tested the two of them. They sound exactly the same. So that's amazing. Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Number 3 on my list is a synthesizer that, if I didn't already have several of synthesizers that cover a lot of the territory of this one, I would probably buy this one today. And that is the Korg Multi-Poly. Now they say it's inspired by the original Mono-Poly. Not really. I mean, it kind of looks like it, but that's about as far as it goes. It is, unfortunately, another one of these 37-key miserable form factor Korgs. It also has that same miserable low-resolution postage stamp screen on it, so that's not great. But what a synthesizer! This comes from the geniuses over at Korg, California with Dan Phillips, nicest guy ever, and they've really hit it out of the park with this one. It is an analog modeling synth that has both virtual analog, wavetable, and wave shaping, where you can apply wave shaping to analog sounds to create harmonics. So amazing different abilities to create different sounds with the oscillators built into it. There are 4 oscillators per voice, so you can make some incredibly fat sounds. And because it's analog modeling, it has full cross mod and ring mod and things you can do with all the different voices to modulate those voices together. It has 2 filters in it that either of those filters could be any one of a number of different modeled filters in there, your Poly 6 filter and all the different types of filters that Korg typically puts in these things. And it has 2 of them that you can set up in series or in parallel. It has massive modulation. It has 4 separate envelopes, and those envelope generators are DA-HDSR, the delay. It's the same as the JD800, where you have the delay and the attack and then a delay. And so you can insert extra motion and movement into those envelopes. It has 5 LFOs, 6 mod processors, and a massive mod matrix with 5,500 different modulation destinations. So the modulation capabilities of this thing are positively insane. It does include motion sequencing 2.0, which is a derivative of the motion sequencing introduced in the original Wavestate and carried on forward in the mod wave and so on. It also has a Chaos Physics pad, so the Korg Chaos Physics pad that you see in the mod wave, you also get that in this synthesizer, which you can then be used to further modulate the sounds that are coming out of it. There's absolute ton of effects with it, 60 voice polyphony. Crazy polyphony on this little tiny power box. If you think about it, that's 240 oscillators playing at once. 4 oscillators, 60 voices. And it does come with, thankfully, an editor librarian software, so you can use it to manage your presets, but you can also edit the sounds of the synthesizer online on your computer, and instead of using the tiny little postage stamp screen and menu options and double key presses and shift functions and all that kind of stuff, instead you can do this complex sound design on the computer and send it back and forth. Actually, you don't even send it. It's real time, back and forth to the synthesizer, just like all the other Korg synthesizers based on that Raspberry Pi compute module. The price of this amazing synthesizer is a paltry $900. Definitely worth it. Somebody asked me a little while ago whether I would pick the multi-poly over the Gaia 2 or whether I would pick the Gaia 2. And they're not really in the same league. The Gaia 2 is more of a basic, I don't want to say beginner synth, but it's good for a beginner because it is basic and a lot of the modulation is preset. It's definitely much, much cheaper than the multi-poly. Multi-poly could do far more. It's more expensive. With that capability comes complexity. So is the multi-poly good for a beginner like the Gaia 2 would be? Probably not, but it can do amazing things and it sounds so good. Number 2 on my list, boy, I really hemmed and hawed about the number 2, number 1. So number 2, the Moog Muse. I really like this synthesizer. I really like the sound that comes out of it. I'm not such a huge fan of Moog and the way they do things, but the proof is in the pudding. The sound that comes out of this synthesizer is enormous. It's an 8-voice bitimbral polyphonic synthesizer. It uses the classic Moog architecture, fully analog, 2 oscillators per voice, has 2 LFOs and dual filters than a single amplitude envelope. It does have aftertouch, so that's nice to see. And the one note that I made about this when I made my list of what I want to talk about is it sounds amazing. It sounds so good. If you want a classic Moog analog sound, this is really a great synthesizer for you. However, there are a couple downsides. It only has 256 patch storage locations, and in this day and age, that's ridiculous. Memory is super cheap. Why would you limit your synthesizer to only 256 locations? I don't know, maybe Moog is saying, well, 256 ought to be enough for anybody, but it's not. I mean, if you look at the Wavestate and so on, you can put thousands, same thing with a montage, you can put thousands and thousands of sounds into there not $256. The other downside is the price. It's $3,500. That's a hefty amount of money. For $3,500, a synthesizer with 2 oscillators and 256 patch storage locations, I'd be thinking twice. But again, it sounds so good. So does one outweigh the other? If you're willing to pay that kind of money for the genuine Moog analog sound, that hey, this is your synthesizer. Number 1 on my list is the Arturia Polybrute 12. This is an absolute beast of a synth, both in size, weight, and capability. 50 pounds this thing weighs. It is fully analog. 12 voice polyphonic. Each voice has 2 oscillators, 3 looping envelopes. You can do FM with those oscillators. It has multiple controls. And of course it has that famous mod matrix with the buttons where you can have up to 12 sources, 32 destinations, and up to 64 connections between all of those in that grid of a mod matrix that is basically kind of like plugging in your modular synthesizer. It does have a polyphonic sequencer in it, and it has a 61 key MPE polyphonic aftertouch key bed. And when I say MPE, that means it can actually identify how when you first start pressing the key down, you can start making sound as soon as the key starts to move and alter the output of the sound throughout that key press. Not just polyphonic aftertouch like a Hydrasynth where you have to push it down to the bottom and then you start moving in it. The Polybrute has that functionality right from the very beginning, kind of like an Expressa V Osmos. It also includes a ribbon controller, just like the Hydrasynth does. It has an XYZ controller, which is a touch controller on the side where you can map those 3 things to either down, slide it around like a touchpad or push it down, and you can map all of those in the mod matrix to control various aspects of the sound being played. It is heavy, it is expensive, it is $3,800, but boy, can you do pretty much anything on this, and it sounds so amazing, and that MPE keybed really allows you to be expressive when you play it. That's it. That's my list of the top 10 synthesizers from 2024. What do you think? Leave your comments in the comments section below. I have put links to all of these synthesizers in the description below. Just have a look, and if you're interested in any of those synthesizers, click on that link and you can get more information. If you like this video, click like. If you like this channel, click subscribe. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year.